The Galactic Assembly had seen many strange things in its thousand-year history. Wars that lasted centuries, planets that sang in harmony, and species that could bend reality with their minds. But nothing had prepared them for what they witnessed that day in the Grand Chamber of Nexus Prime. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire adjusted his crystalline breathing apparatus as he watched the human delegation enter the assembly hall. Humans were still considered a novelty in galactic politics. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, making them practically infants compared to the ancient civilizations that governed the galaxy. The human delegation was small, consisting of only 3 individuals. Their leader, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, walked with quiet confidence despite being surrounded by beings that could crush her with a thought. Behind her walked 2 others, a tall man with graying hair and a younger woman carrying what appeared to be a simple briefcase. But it wasn't the humans that caused the assembly to fall silent. It was what followed them. The Vorthak entered the chamber with movements that seemed to flow like liquid shadow. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, covered in midnight black scales that seemed to absorb light itself, the creature was a walking nightmare from the deepest corners of space. Its 6 arms moved with predatory grace, each ending in claws that could slice through starship hull plating. The triangular head housed 3 eyes that glowed with an inner fire, and its mouth revealed rows of teeth designed for tearing apart prey. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as the apex predators. They had never been conquered, never been defeated, and never shown submission to any species. They ruled through fear and strength, commanding respect from even the most powerful civilizations. Their empire spanned dozens of star systems, and their mere presence in any conflict could decide the outcome. Yet here, in the assembly hall, something impossible was happening. The massive Vorthak, known as War Chief Thrazagon, walked 3 steps behind the human woman. Its head was lowered in what could only be described as a gesture of deference. The creature that had never bowed to anyone was following a human who barely reached its chest. Ambassador Kethvar felt his secondary heart skip a beat. Around the chamber, representatives from hundreds of species sat in stunned silence. The Altarian delegates' tentacles had gone completely still. The silicon-based Kronar had actually dimmed their internal light in shock. Even the ancient ethereal ones seemed to shimmer with surprise. Dr. Chen approached the central speaking platform with calm professionalism, seemingly unaware of the sensation she was causing. She activated the universal translator and began to speak in clear, measured tones. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Assembly, I come before you today not as a conqueror or a superior being, but as someone who wishes to share a discovery that could change how we understand intelligence and cooperation in our galaxy." Her words were translated into hundreds of languages and communication methods. But it was her next action that truly shocked the assembly. She turned around and gestured for War Chief Thrazagon to come forward. The massive predator moved with surprising gentleness, positioning itself beside the speaking platform. When Dr. Chen reached out her small human hand, the Vorthak lowered its enormous head, allowing her to place her palm against its scaled forehead. "This is War Chief Thrazagon of the Vorthak Empire," Dr. Chen announced. 3 months ago, he was considered one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Today, he has chosen to stand here as proof that intelligence comes in many forms and that understanding can bridge even the greatest differences. The assembly erupted in chaos. Delegates began shouting questions in dozens of languages. Security forces moved to alert status, unsure whether they were witnessing a diplomatic breakthrough or an elaborate trap. Some representatives demanded to know if the Vorthak had been somehow controlled or coerced. Through it all, War Chief Thrazagon remained calm and dignified, occasionally nodding to acknowledge questions directed at him. When the noise finally died down, Dr. Chen continued her presentation. The Vorthak approached our research station at the edge of human space 3 months ago. Their ship was damaged, their crew was dying, and they had nowhere else to turn. Every other species in the galaxy had either fled from them or tried to destroy them on sight. We chose a different path. She activated a holographic display that showed images of the first contact. The footage revealed a massive Vorthak warship, scarred and leaking atmosphere, broadcasting distress signals that were being ignored by passing vessels from other civilizations. Our station commander, Captain Rodriguez, made the decision to offer assistance despite knowing the reputation of the Vorthak. We brought their ship into our repair bay, and our medical team worked around the clock to save their crew. The hologram shifted to show human medical personnel working alongside Vorthak warriors. The contrast was striking. Small, fragile humans carefully tending to injuries on beings that could have killed them with a casual swipe. What we discovered during those weeks changed everything we thought we knew about the Vorthak, Dr. Chen explained. They aren't the mindless predators that galactic propaganda has portrayed them as. They are a highly intelligent species with a complex culture, advanced technology, and a deep sense of honor. Ambassador Kethvar leaned forward, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. Like many others in the assembly, he had been raised on stories of Vorthak brutality. The idea that they possessed honor seemed impossible to believe. The Vorthak operate on a principle they call Thekmar, Dr. Chen continued. It roughly translates to strength through worthy opposition. They don't attack the weak because there is no honor in such victories. They seek out the strongest opponents because only through facing worthy challenges can one grow. The hologram now showed Vorthak cultural ceremonies, revealing a sophisticated society with art, music, and complex philosophical discussions. The assembled delegates watched in fascination as the footage revealed Vorthak creating intricate sculptures and performing what could only be described as ritualistic dances. The reason they have been so aggressive toward other species is that they have been searching for someone who would stand and fight them as equals, Dr. Chen explained. When they found that most civilizations either fled or tried to destroy them from a distance, they interpreted this as cowardice and weakness. War Chief Thrasgon stepped forward and activated his own translation device. His voice was deep and resonant, like the sound of distant thunder. For generations, my people have wandered the stars seeking worthy opponents, he said in carefully measured words. We found only those who ran in fear or attacked from hiding. We began to believe that we were alone in our pursuit of honor. The chamber had gone completely silent. Every delegate was hanging on the war chief's words. When the humans offered aid to our dying ship, we expected them to demand payment or to try to capture us for their own purposes. Instead, they asked for nothing. They healed our wounds, repaired our ship, and when we offered to test their strength in combat, they proposed something we had never encountered before. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. We suggested a different kind of test. Instead of physical combat, we proposed a series of intellectual and creative challenges, puzzles, strategic games, collaborative problem-solving exercises. At first, we did not understand, War Chief Thrasgon admitted. How could such small, weak creatures hope to challenge the might of the Vorthak? But Dr. Chen and her team showed us that strength comes in many forms. The holographic display now showed scenes of humans and Vorthak working together on complex mathematical problems, engaging in strategic board games, and collaborating on engineering projects. The Vorthak, despite their fearsome appearance, showed remarkable gentleness when working alongside their human partners. What we discovered, Dr. Chen said, is that the Vorthak have been misunderstood for centuries. They aren't conquerors seeking to dominate others. They are explorers seeking to understand the true nature of strength and intelligence in the universe. Ambassador Kethvar found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about both humans and Vorthak. The implications of this revelation were staggering. If the Vorthak could be reached through understanding rather than force, it could change the entire balance of galactic politics. The Vorthak have agreed to share their advanced technology with humanity, Dr. Chen announced. In exchange, we will help them establish peaceful contact with other species who are willing to engage with them as equals rather than enemies. The assembly exploded into discussion again, but this time the tone was different. Instead of fear and confusion, there was excitement and curiosity. Representatives began asking detailed questions about Vorthak culture, technology, and intentions. War Chief Thrasgon answered each question with patience and dignity, often consulting with Dr. Chen when complex concepts needed to be explained. It became clear that the human and Vorthak had developed not just an alliance, but a genuine friendship based on mutual respect. As the session continued, something remarkable began to happen. Other delegates started approaching the platform, not with weapons or defensive postures, but with genuine curiosity. The Altarian ambassador asked about Vorthak art forms. The Kronar delegate inquired about their engineering techniques. Even the usually aloof ethereal ones seemed interested in their philosophical concepts. Dr. Chen watched with satisfaction as barriers that had existed for centuries began to crumble. The Vorthak had spent generations being feared and isolated, while other species had spent those same generations living in terror of them. Now, for the first time, real communication was taking place. But even as hope began to build in the assembly chamber, Dr. Chen knew that this was just the beginning. The real test would come when they attempted to establish broader diplomatic relations. Not every species would be as open-minded as those present today, and there were powerful factions in the galaxy that had built their influence on the fear of the Vorthak. The emergency session was called just 6 hours after Dr. Chen's presentation ended. Ambassador Kethvar rushed through the corridors of Nexus Prime, his crystalline breathing apparatus clicking rapidly as he processed the political earthquake that had just shaken the galaxy. The military council chamber was packed with representatives from the galaxy's most powerful military alliances. General Vextar of the Hegemony Defense Force stood at the center podium, his 4 arms gesturing aggressively as he addressed the gathering. "This human deception cannot be allowed to stand," he declared, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in a dozen wars. "The Vorthak are playing a long game, using these naive humans as pawns to lower our defenses." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Admiral Zorin of the Stellar Confederation nodded her scaled head vigorously. "My intelligence networks report that Vorthak fleet movements have increased by 30% since this alleged alliance began. They are positioning for a massive assault." Ambassador Kethvar found himself in an uncomfortable position. His own government had built much of their military doctrine around the Vorthak threat. The Zephyrian Empire's entire defense budget was justified by the need to protect against potential Vorthak invasion. If these predators could actually be reasoned with, it would undermine decades of policy. "With respect, General Vextar," came a voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Commander Sarah Thompson, the human military liaison who had arrived with Dr. Chen's delegation. She was young, barely 40 by human standards, but she wore the uniform of someone who had seen combat. "The fleet movements you mention are Vorthak ships responding to distress calls," she explained calmly. "For the first time in their history, they are offering aid instead of conquest. 3 Altarian mining colonies have been rescued from solar flare damage by Vorthak vessels in the past month." General Vextar's expression darkened. "Impossible. The Vorthak do not rescue. They consume." Commander Thompson activated her personal datapad, projecting holographic evidence into the chamber's central display. The footage showed massive Vorthak ships carefully evacuating Altarian miners from unstable asteroid facilities, then providing them with food, medical care, and transport to safety. The Vorthak have been operating under the assumption that showing mercy was a sign of weakness, Thompson continued. Dr. Chen's team helped them understand that true strength often lies in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Admiral Zorin slammed her fist on her delegation's table. This is all very touching, but it proves nothing. The Vorthak could be building trust only to betray us later. We cannot risk the security of trillions of beings based on the word of a single human scientist. The chamber erupted in heated debate. Some delegates argued for immediate military action to prevent what they saw as an inevitable Vorthak betrayal. Others called for caution, wanting to study this new development before making decisions that could plunge the galaxy into war. Ambassador Kethvar stood slowly, his crystalline form catching the chamber's lights. The room gradually quieted as others recognized his species' reputation for careful analysis and balanced judgment. Perhaps, he said carefully, we are approaching this situation with the wrong perspective. Instead of debating whether to trust or destroy, we should be asking why the humans succeeded where we all failed. General Vextar scoffed. The humans are barely capable of interstellar travel. What could they possibly know about dealing with apex predators that we do not? That may be exactly the point, Kethvar replied. We have all spent centuries building our military and political strategies around the assumption that the Vorthak were irredeemably hostile. Perhaps our very sophistication blinded us to other possibilities. Commander Thompson nodded appreciatively. Ambassador Kethvar raises an important point. Humanity's lack of preconceptions may have been our greatest advantage. We didn't approach the Vorthak with centuries of fear and hostility clouding our judgment. She activated another holographic display, this one showing comparative data on galactic military spending. Every major civilization has allocated enormous resources to anti-Vorthak defenses. The hegemony spends 40% of its budget on Vorthak countermeasures. The Confederation has built entire fleets specifically to fight them. Meanwhile, humanity spent our resources on exploration, science, and medicine. The data was sobering. Trillions of galactic credits, countless research hours, and entire generations of military personnel had been dedicated to a conflict that might have been unnecessary. When the Vorthak ship arrived at our station damaged and desperate, our medical team didn't see fearsome predators, Thompson explained. They saw injured beings who needed help. Our response was based on compassion rather than fear. Admiral Zorin stood abruptly. Compassion is a luxury that gets you killed when dealing with apex predators. Your naivety may have doomed us all. Before Thompson could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. War Chief Thrasgon entered the chamber, his massive form somehow managing to move silently despite his size. The assembled military leaders instinctively reached for weapons, even though they were in a neutral diplomatic zone. I request permission to address this gathering, the Vorthak said, his deep voice carrying easily through the chamber. I believe I can clarify some misunderstandings about my people's intentions. General Vextar's four arms moved in what his species considered a threatening gesture. You dare enter our strategic discussions? This proves that the humans have compromised our security. Thrasgon made no threatening moves in response. Instead, he simply stood calmly and spoke in measured tones. General Vextar, I know of you. Your fleets have engaged my people 17 times over the past 30 years. You are a skilled warrior, and my people respect your tactical abilities. The compliment seemed to surprise Vextar. In all his years of fighting Vorthak, none had ever acknowledged his skills with anything resembling respect. However, Thrasgon continued, you misunderstand the nature of those engagements. My people were not attempting to conquer your territories. We were testing your strength, hoping to find opponents worthy of respect. Testing us? Admiral Zorin demanded. You killed thousands of our people. Yes, Thrasgon acknowledged without flinching. And we lost thousands of our own. Each battle taught us about your capabilities, your resolve, your honor as warriors. We found you wanting not in strength, but in understanding. Commander Thompson stepped forward. The Vorthak operate on a concept called honorable engagement. They believe that the only way to truly know a species is to test them in battle. But they were looking for opponents who would fight with honor rather than simply trying to destroy them. Thrasgon nodded. Your military tactics focused on overwhelming firepower and surprise attacks. While effective, such methods told us nothing about your true character. We began to believe that you were cowards who could only fight from hiding. The accusation of cowardice caused several delegates to rise angrily, but Kethvar raised a hand for calm. War Chief Thrasgon, what changed your perspective? The humans did something unprecedented, Thrasgon replied. When we offered to test their strength in combat, they proposed alternatives. They challenged us with puzzles that required intelligence rather than brute force. They engaged us in strategic games that tested our minds rather than our weapons. For the first time, we found beings who sought to understand us rather than simply defeat us. He paused, his three eyes scanning the assembled military leaders. Dr. Chen and her team proved that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to build. They showed us that the greatest warriors are those who can win without fighting. General Vextar's expression had changed from hostility to confusion. Are you saying that all these years of conflict were simply misunderstandings? Not misunderstandings, Thrasgon corrected. Different philosophies of strength. You sought to eliminate threats. We sought to find worthy allies. The humans showed us how both goals could be achieved through cooperation rather than conquest. Admiral Zorin remained skeptical. Even if we accept this explanation, how can we trust that your people won't revert to their old ways? Generations of aggression cannot be overcome by a few months of cooperation. Thrasgon was quiet for a long moment, clearly considering his response carefully. Admiral Zorin, you raise a valid concern. Trust must be earned through actions, not words. This is why I propose a trial period of cooperation. He activated a holographic projector, displaying a star chart of contested border regions. There are 17 systems currently disputed between Vorthak territory and your various alliances. I propose joint patrols of these regions, with mixed crews of Vorthak and allied species working together. The proposal caused an immediate uproar. The idea of putting their people on the same ships as Vorthak warriors seemed like madness to many of the military leaders. Commander Thompson raised her voice above the noise. The human crew who worked with War Chief Thrasgon's people found them to be honorable, reliable, and surprisingly gentle when the situation didn't require combat. Our joint exercises revealed that Vorthak tactical knowledge combined with human strategic thinking created incredibly effective teams. She activated her own display, showing footage of humans and Vorthak working together on various simulated missions. The cooperation was remarkable, with each species contributing their unique strengths to achieve shared objectives. Furthermore, Thompson continued, the Vorthak have technology that could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. Their shield generators are decades ahead of anything we've developed, and their FTL drive systems could cut travel times between distant systems by 70%. This caught the attention of every military leader in the room. Advanced technology was the one argument that could overcome centuries of mistrust. Ambassador Kethvar found himself at the center of a decision that could reshape galactic civilization. The evidence suggested that humanity had indeed achieved the impossible. They had turned the galaxy's greatest threat into potential allies. But the risks of trusting the Vorthak were enormous, and a single betrayal could cost billions of lives. I propose a compromise, he announced. We establish a trial cooperation program, but with strict safeguards and monitoring protocols. Small joint missions in neutral space, with independent observers from multiple species documenting the results. Thrazgan nodded approvingly. This approach shows wisdom. My people understand caution, and we respect those who verify trust through observation rather than blind faith. The debate continued for hours, but gradually, a consensus began to emerge. The potential benefits of cooperation with the Vorthak were too significant to ignore, but the risks demanded careful management. As the session concluded, Ambassador Kethvar reflected on the profound changes that humanity had brought to galactic politics in just a few short months. These young species, barely capable of interstellar travel, had accomplished what centuries of advanced civilizations could not. They had found a way to turn enemies into allies through the simple power of understanding and respect. 6 months after the first joint patrols began, Ambassador Kethvar stood on the observation deck of the exploration vessel Unity's Dawn, watching something that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see human and Vorthak crew members working side by side to repair a damaged solar collection array on a remote research station. The sight still amazed him. Humans barely reaching the chests of their Vorthak partners, directing repairs with calm professionalism, while the massive predators followed their instructions with careful precision. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. "Ambassador, we're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime," announced Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the human communications officer. "It's marked as urgent from the Assembly leadership." Kethvar made his way to the communications center, where Dr. Chen was already reviewing the incoming message. Her expression was serious as she looked up from the display. "The Stellar Confederation is withdrawing from the cooperation program," she announced grimly. "Admiral Zorin is claiming that recent Vorthak fleet movements indicate preparation for a massive assault." War Chief Thrazgan, who had been studying tactical displays nearby, looked up with what appeared to be disappointment. "The Admiral continues to interpret our actions through the lens of her expectations rather than our actual intentions." "What fleet movements is she referring to?" asked Commander Thompson, who had become the primary human liaison for the joint operations. Dr. Chen activated the holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of the contested border regions. Red indicators marked the positions of Vorthak fleets, while blue showed the locations of Confederation forces. According to Confederation intelligence, 17 Vorthak battle groups have moved to positions along their borders, she explained. Zorin is interpreting this as preparation for invasion. Thrazgan made a sound that might have been laughter if it had come from a human throat. "The Admiral's intelligence is accurate, but her interpretation is flawed. Yes, 17 battle groups have taken position along Confederation space, but they are not there to invade." He manipulated the display controls with surprising delicacy for such massive claws, highlighting several areas along the border. 3 days ago, we detected unusual energy signatures in these regions. Our analysis suggests that the Devourers have returned. The mention of the Devourers caused an immediate chill throughout the communication center. The Devourers were an ancient threat that had last been seen in the galaxy over 2 centuries ago. They were machines of unknown origin that consumed entire star systems, converting matter into energy for their incomprehensible purposes. "Are you certain?" Dr. Chen asked, her scientific mind immediately focusing on the evidence rather than the fear. "Our sensor technology is more advanced than most species realize," Thrazgan explained. "We have been monitoring deep space for signs of their return since their last appearance. The energy patterns are unmistakable." Lieutenant Webb checked the communication logs. "We haven't received any reports of Devourer activity from any other sources." "That is because no other species has the sensor range to detect them at this distance," Thrazgan replied. By the time conventional sensors identify devourer presence, they are usually within days of consuming their target systems. Commander Thompson studied the tactical display with growing alarm. If the devourers are returning in force, we need to alert all galactic civilizations immediately. This isn't a threat that any single species can handle alone. Agreed, said Dr. Chen. But first we need to convince the other species that the Vorthak fleet movements are defensive rather than aggressive. Ambassador Kethvar activated his personal communication device, opening a channel to the Galactic Assembly's Emergency Council. Within minutes, he had arranged for an emergency session to address the crisis. The Emergency Assembly convened in just 4 hours, with representatives from every major civilization present either in person or through quantum communication links. The tension in the chamber was palpable as delegates took their positions. Admiral Zorin was the first to speak, her voice carrying across the chamber with military authority. The Vorthak have positioned their fleets for a coordinated assault on multiple sectors. This cooperation program has been nothing more than an elaborate deception to lower our defenses. General Vextar nodded in agreement. Our intelligence confirms massive Vorthak fleet movements. 17 battle groups, over 300 ships of war, all positioned for simultaneous attack. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives demanded explanations and called for immediate military response. The fragile trust that had been building over the past months seemed ready to shatter completely. Dr. Chen rose from her delegation's position, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos. It was Thrasgon who brought order to the assembly, not through threats or intimidation, but by standing silently in the center of the chamber until his mere presence commanded attention. "Honored representatives," he said once the noise had subsided, "you face a choice between fear and trust. I understand your fear, for it has guided galactic politics for generations. But I ask you to consider the evidence rather than your assumptions." He activated the chamber's central display, showing the deep space sensor readings that had detected the devourer energy signatures. "My fleets are positioned not to attack your civilizations, but to defend them from a threat that could destroy us all." The sensor data was immediately analyzed by the Assembly's scientific advisors. Within minutes, confirmation came from multiple sources that the energy patterns were indeed consistent with historical devourer activity. "The devourers operate by consuming star systems in a specific pattern," Dr. Chen explained as she took the floor. "They target systems with high energy output first, then work their way through surrounding regions. Based on their current trajectory, they will reach inhabited space within 6 months. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. The devourers had been responsible for the extinction of at least 3 major civilizations during their previous incursions. Their technology was so advanced that even combined galactic forces had barely managed to drive them away last time. "How do we know this isn't an elaborate Vorthak deception?" demanded Admiral Zorin. "Conveniently, they present evidence of an ancient threat just when we begin to question their intentions." Thrasgon's response was unexpected. Instead of defending himself, he made an offer that stunned the entire assembly. "Admiral Zorin, I propose that you accompany our fleets to the border regions. See for yourself what we face. Bring your best sensors, your most experienced analysts, your finest ships. Judge our intentions by our actions rather than your fears." The offer was so unprecedented that the chamber fell completely silent. No Vorthak had ever voluntarily allowed alien observers aboard their ships during military operations. Dr. Chen seized the moment. "This is exactly the kind of cooperation that could save all our civilizations. The Vorthak have sensor technology that can detect devourer activity months before anyone else. Combined with our various defensive technologies and tactical knowledge, we might actually stand a chance against them." Ambassador Kethvar found himself once again at the center of a crucial decision. The evidence of devourer activity was compelling, but the risk of trusting Vorthak military forces remained enormous. I propose a joint reconnaissance mission, he announced. Multi-species crews on fast ships, escorted by Vorthak vessels to investigate these energy signatures directly. If the Devourer threat is real, we will have confirmation. If it is a deception, we will expose it. The debate that followed was intense, but brief. The potential consequences of either trusting too much or too little were so severe that action became inevitable. Within days, a joint fleet had been assembled. Human scientific expertise, Zephyrian sensor technology, Altarian defensive systems, and Vorthak military might combine into a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The journey to the border regions took 2 weeks. During that time, crews from different species worked together with an efficiency that surprised everyone involved. The humans' talent for bridging communication gaps proved invaluable as they helped establish working relationships between species that had rarely cooperated before. When they reached the target coordinates, what they found confirmed everyone's worst fears and highest hopes simultaneously. The Devourers were indeed returning, but in numbers far greater than their previous incursions. Hundreds of massive ships, each the size of a small moon, moved through space, consuming everything in their path. But the joint fleet was ready for them in a way that no galactic force had ever been before. Vorthak battle tactics, combined with human strategic thinking and Zephyrian technological precision, created defensive plans that maximized each species' strengths. The Devourers found themselves facing opponents who could match their technology with superior coordination and unprecedented cooperation. The first engagement lasted 18 hours and ended with the destruction of 3 Devourer ships and the retreat of their advance forces. It was the first time in recorded history that the ancient machines had been decisively defeated in direct combat. In the aftermath, as crews from multiple species celebrated their victory together, Ambassador Kethvar reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity's simple act of offering aid to a damaged ship had transformed the galaxy's most feared predators into its most valuable allies. The humans had taught everyone an important lesson about the nature of strength. True power didn't come from the ability to destroy enemies, but from the wisdom to turn enemies into friends. As he watched human medical teams treating wounded Vorthak warriors with the same care they showed their own species, Kethavar realized that the galaxy had gained something far more valuable than military victory. They had discovered what it meant to be truly civilized. The apex predator had bowed not because humanity was stronger, but because they had shown a strength that the galaxy had forgotten existed, the strength of compassion, understanding, and hope. In the weeks that followed, as news of the victory spread throughout galactic civilization, a new era began. Species that had spent centuries in isolation or conflict began reaching out to one another with genuine curiosity rather than fear. The cooperation program expanded rapidly, with dozens of civilizations requesting to join joint operations. Trade routes that had been closed for generations reopened. Scientific knowledge flowed freely between species that had previously guarded their secrets jealously. Dr. Chen found herself appointed as the first director of interspecies relations, tasked with facilitating the growing cooperation between civilizations. Commander Thompson became the head of the new Joint Defense Force, while War Chief Thrasgon served as her primary tactical advisor. Ambassador Kethavar often marveled at how quickly things had changed. The galaxy that had been defined by fear and mistrust for so long was becoming something beautiful and hopeful. And it had all started because a small group of humans had chosen to see potential allies where everyone else saw only enemies. The assembly chambers, that had once echoed with threats and accusations, now rang with the sounds of genuine collaboration and shared purpose. Representatives who had barely spoken to each other were now working together on projects that would benefit all their civilizations. The humans had proven that sometimes the greatest victories came not from defeating your enemies, but from helping them become the best versions of themselves. In doing so, they had changed not just the Vorthak, but the entire galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be strong.